Welcome to another explainer. Today, we're strapping in to examine one of the absolute most fascinating, complex rides human beings have ever built, the global economy. Now, as you probably know, it doesn't just move in a straight, boring line. It climbs to these thrilling highs and drops into stomach-churning lows. So we're going to unpack the actual mechanics of this roller coaster. We'll look at what really drives long-term growth, why the ride gets so incredibly bumpy in the short term, and how different economic engineers completely debate the best way to keep us all safely on track. Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for today. We'll hit defining economic growth, the problem with GDP, the business cycle, the causes of economic fluctuations, and finally, the engines of growth. Section 1. Defining economic growth, the underlying track. So, before we get to the drops and loops, economic growth fundamentally comes down to tracking the annual rate of increase in total production or income. But economists don't just look at raw, flashy numbers. They adjust for reality using real terms to strip away the total illusion of inflation. And they absolutely have to account for population growth. Think about it. If your economy grows by 2%, but your population grows by 4%, your actual slice of the pie is shrinking. That's exactly why tracking real GDP and real GDP per capita is so vital to understanding our true baseline track. Let's ground this math in reality really quick. To find the real GDP growth rate for, say, 2011, we take the real GDP from 2011, roughly 2.83 million, and subtract the 2010 base of 2.74 million. Divide that difference by the 2010 base, multiply the whole thing by 100, and boom, you get a concrete 3.3% growth rate for that year. It's just a snappy formula that tells us the exact angle at which our track is climbing. Section 2. The problem with GDP. Flaws in the instruments. Now, while GDP gives us that neat 3.3% figure we just calculated, it has some pretty massive blind spots. It completely misses non-market production, like the immense yet totally unpaid labor of managing a household. It also skips over unrecorded activity. So if it happens in the informal economy or under the table, it is literally invisible to the data. Plus, GDP numbers are subject to constant revisions as better information rolls in, but the absolute biggest flaw? It ignores overall economic welfare. It tracks sheer production, not human happiness, not health, not environmental sustainability. Basically, it's a speedometer, not a health monitor. Section 3. The business cycle, the ride. So if our long-term track is generally angled upward toward growth, why does participating in the economy sometimes feel so terrible? Well, notice the idealized straight trend of long-term growth compared to the chaotic reality we actually live in. We hit a trough at certain points. These are the low points where the economy is just stagnant. Then we get an upswing, an expansion where jobs are plentiful, business is booming, eventually hitting a peak. But as we all know, what goes up must come down, leading to a stomach-churning contraction right back into another trough. This constant, unavoidable pattern of expansion and contraction, that is the business cycle. Section 4. Causes of economic fluctuations, the engineers' debate. Surprisingly, economists do not entirely agree on what actually causes these swings. First up is the classical view. Classical economists argue that the economy is inherently stable. Left entirely alone, it just cruises smoothly upward. In their view, any disruptive wavy cycles are caused by exogenous or outside disturbances. Usually, they point the finger right at faulty government policy, throwing the machine out of balance. Their solution? No government intervention. Just let the free market self-correct. Conversely, we have the Keynesian view, which paints a totally different picture. Keynesians argue that the economy is cyclically unstable by its very nature. They believe business cycles are endogenous, meaning they're built right into private market economies. If business conditions slightly improve, market mechanisms like the multiplier effect reinforce that improvement, creating a massive upswing. And the exact same feedback loop happens on the way down. Because the ride is naturally unstable, Keynesians argue that government intervention is absolutely crucial to apply the brakes during a peak or, hit the gas during a trough. Finally, we have the structuralist view, which is a bit more unpredictable. Structuralists posit that the market system is neither inherently stable nor systematically unstable. Instead, fluctuations are essentially random occurrences. They're caused by massive structural changes or unpredictable global events. Think the 1970s oil crisis, massive political transitions in the 90s, the 2008 global financial crisis, or obviously the COVID-19 pandemic. The ride jolts simply because the world itself jolts. Seeing these three distinct macroeconomic philosophies side by side, it's wild how fundamentally they disagree on the nature of the economy, the root causes of the cycles, and whether the government should get involved at all. It is super important for us to understand all three of these perspectives to really grasp how modern economic policy is debated today. And remember, we're not picking a team here. We're just looking at the blueprints these different engineers use to argue their respective cases. Now, regardless of why the cycle happens, policymakers need to know exactly where we are on the ride at any given moment. To measure this, experts rely heavily on leading indicators. These are specific data points that actually peak before overall economic activity peaks. Basically, think of them as the headlights on our roller coaster. Examples include new motor vehicle sales, the registration of new companies, approved building plans, and merchandise exports. If these start dropping, the rest of the economy usually follows. They also monitor confidence indicators, like surveys from the Bureau for Economic Research, to gauge the overall psychological mood of businesses. Section 5. The engines of growth, fueling the coaster. To wrap things up, real sustained growth requires a perfect marriage between supply and demand. On the supply side, you need the raw fuel, right? The quantity and quality of natural resources, a healthy, growing labor force, deepening capital, and vibrant entrepreneurship. But here's the catch. All that supply is completely useless without the spark of demand. You absolutely need robust domestic spending, a real appetite for your exports abroad, and effective import substitution strategies to protect your internal industries. It literally takes both engines firing together to truly propel the economy forward. As we close out this explainer, I'm going to leave you to ponder this final thought. When we look around the world and analyze why some economies experience chronically low growth while others absolutely soar, what is the ultimate root cause? Is it their institutions, their property rights, laws, and constitutions? Is it their geography, their specific climate and ecological challenges? Or is it their culture, their deeply held values, beliefs, and preferences? Economists fiercely debate this, and honestly, the answer you lean toward will likely shape how you view the entire global roller coaster. Thanks for joining me, and keep questioning the mechanics of the world around you.